Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Skyberg here with Consolidated Planning Group. Hope you guys are all doing well today. Thanks for joining us. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We're glad you're here. If you've joined us in the past, we are certainly glad that you are back. Today, we are back with Elizabeth Sharpe today. We're going to be talking about the aggressive and challenging child and why traditional discipline strategies may not work. So we're going to take a deeper dive into that. For those of you, I always go over our housekeeping items right at first because sometimes people are wondering, can you see me? No, we can't see you. We are in webinar mode. We can't see you or hear you, but our chat box is open today and you can put your questions in the chat box. If you emailed us a write-in question, we do have those. Elizabeth has those, and we're going to be going through those during our time together. So if you're planning for your time, we're planning for an hour today. We aim always to start on time and end on time, so we will be doing that today. From a consolidated planning group perspective, we've been around for over 30 years. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. Our whole firm is nuanced in planning for special needs. I am a parent myself to kids with disabilities who have transitioned into adulthood. And I can say that we eat, sleep, and breathe this. So people come to us, they want to know how much money do we need to fund a special needs trust? They want to know who's going to care for my child when I'm gone? How do I retire and stay retired and still have enough money to fund a special needs trust? And we answer all kinds of questions like that. We put lifetime care plans in place, protection plans. We do transition planning. We help set up ABLE accounts. And with our national certification as Social Security advisors, we help people know exactly when and how to pull the trigger on their Social Security benefits, possibly SSI benefits for the child or disabled adult child benefits, how to have money in the right buckets to preserve the eligibility for state and federally funded programs. And we always just like to mention that this is a very kind of niche business that we have. Very few advisors have any background in special needs. There's fewer than 150 of us in the entire United States. There's a ton of financial advisors, but most of them don't have any background about special needs, about SSI, Medicaid waivers, or some of the other moving parts that are critical to the overall plan when it comes to your loved one with a disability. So, having said that, what I want to do is I want to go just turn things over to Elizabeth. So, Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about yourself for those of you that are joining for the first time. They may have not seen you in the past.
Hi, thanks. Welcome, everybody. So excited that you all are here. Before I tell you a little bit about me, I have a little slide there. And what it says is if your daily life includes a child or a teen that is doing any of these type, that's me in the chat. So if you could look at some of these behaviors, it's certainly not all the behaviors, and you are personally dealing with this either as a teacher in a classroom or as a parent or a grandparent or a foster parent or an new adoptive parent, please put in the chat, that's me. I want people to do that because I want you to be aware that you are not alone in this journey and that many families are going through this at the moment. And I see April's, and there could be more that are not on here. So if you're experiencing other challenging behaviors that you would like to figure out how to stop, please put in there, that's me, so that I can see who is here and just have a little bit of engagement and look at your names. I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about my story. I feel that my story is really important because it defines how I work with families and what I do. A little bit about myself is I'm married at 26 years. I'll talk about some of us who are married. Co-parenting is one of the strategies and challenges to helping children have better executive function. I'm originally from California, so if there's any California people, I'm from the Bay Area, miss the beaches. I now live in Godley, Texas. For the last, now it's 5 years that I've been here. Godley, Texas is about 30 minutes outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And I have 3 children, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those children because they also have been part of what has gotten me to the point now where I can successfully help families get the results that they're looking for. And so we'll go to the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit about my 3 children. I think the next slide will, let's go back to the other one. Forgot what order these were in. So we'll go back to the other slide. Can we go to the one previous to this? Great, thank you. Oh, forward one more. There you go. To tell you a little background what I do professionally, so I am a learning and behavior therapist, and I am in private practice. I work with families across the United States and Canada. Currently, I work with 6 states and Canada in terms of helping families in 2 primary ways. One thing that I do is I help children and equip children one-on-one, online mostly, unless you live near me, in any type of academic challenge, math, reading, writing, spelling, anything academically, math. And so I have specializations in dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and then also in any type of auditory that may be causing a child to not actively do well. And so just so you all know that all children want to learn and be successful at school, whether that's homeschool, private school, or public school. And many times public schools, academically speaking, even though there's IEPs and 504s in place, they don't always have the staff to provide the services that a child may need. So if you're struggling academically, well, not the focus of today's webinar, please feel free to reach out. The other part that I do that really I love doing, and it all began a lot because of the journey that I had. One is I was a behavior interventionist in Fort Worth ISD for 2 years. Prior to that, I actually taught at a community college in child development for about 22 years. And I trained teachers and family childcare providers and did parenting classes and all of that. And then I started doing behavior intervention work at an ISD. And after 2 years of that, realized that I could be of more use and we could get parents better results if I was in private practice. And so that, along with the needs of my 10-year-old, which I'll talk about in a moment, led me to go into private practice. And so now I work with families who want support in either academic issues with their child, or they're having what we call executive function behavior issues, and they're having trouble functioning behaviorally, either at home, at school, or at both. And so if you want to get in touch with me, my number is in the chat. Texting is best if you just text me. And the first step is to have a phone call. So we'll go to the next part. So this is my family. This is my husband, who's also a behavior interventionist in a middle school. And he's been doing special education work for 20 years. And then on the right are my 3 children. Our eldest is Maya. She's a biological child of both of us. She's 22 years old, and she had 5 has 5 learning disabilities, in addition to ADD. And at the time when we were going through the journey of why was she in 5th grade and not reading, even though I was an educator, I didn't know. I didn't know about dyslexia, didn't know about dysgraphia, didn't know about all the D's, had no idea. And we just thought she just wasn't trying hard enough. And sure enough, we found out through some testing that she was severely dyslexic. She also had dyscalculia, dysgraphia, auditory processing, visual processing disorder, and a couple of other things. And I'm happy to attest that through our journey, there was a lot that was missed. And we'll talk about that in a moment, why sometimes when you're seeking help, you don't get all the help that you need. We missed a lot of things, but in the journey, I learned so much about what the challenges are in getting the help you need for your children. Maya graduated. She's now 22. She actually runs her own profitable sports massage therapy business in South Miami. She was an all-star cheerleading athlete for 15 years. actually won a bronze and gold world's medal in her sport and division. And now she coaches at one of the top gyms in the country, which is why she's in South Miami, and also extremely heavily involved in youth ministry with high school and junior high students. And we miss her all the time because she's not here very often. And then she's holding Marcus, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, which led to a lot of understanding executive function issues. Marcus was adopted from California. He was 6 months when we got him, and he is on the spectrum, PDA, ADHD, and sensory processing issues. And so he was when he was about 4, we went through some very, very serious behavior challenges, and we could not figure out why. What was happening? Here is a child who loves their parents, academically very bright, but was not functioning both in private school as well, not functioning in traditional, in a program that was actually designed for children with ASD and ADHD. And I have to tell you that that was our worst academic experience ever. It just did not go well. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what led us to how I do now working therapy and working with families. And then Zachary is our youngest. He is 9. We adopted Zachary here in the DFW area. He came to us when he was 7 years old last February. We adopted him legally in July, and now he is officially a Sharpe. And boy, going from 1 to 2, all of you who have multiple children, I have such respect. It was definitely a learning curve for my husband and I. And Zachary is dyslexic, also has dyscalculia, and he has extremely severe ADHD, and also some trauma around what his life experience has been being in foster care for many, many years. And so that's what led me to the journey. And I always tell people every day I live the dream, because I still have my 10-year-old at home and my 9-year-old at home. And they are my greatest teachers in learning what I know and what I don't know. And so part of this journey for my husband and I is that when Marcus reached, he was around 4 or 5, when we could not, all the things were not working behaviorally wise. And so I wanted to put him on meds, and I'm here to say that it's every family's decision. But there are side effects to medications, and my husband was very, very against it, and he was like, absolutely not. We're not putting him on medication. And so that led me down this journey of what was happening with the brain, what was happening neurologically, why was a child just not functioning in certain situations, especially at a school that was designed, quote unquote, for ADHD and ASD children. Why was this not working for him? And that led me to peruse and lift every rock under the sun and every piece of research I could get my hand on to understand, and read all the books. But none of them, not one thing helped me figure out the puzzle, because that's what this is. Behavior, the behavior of your child, whatever led you here today, it is a puzzle. And what I do really, really well, that I love doing, is figuring out all the pieces. So let's go to the next slide. And by the way, if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and I will answer every question that's put in there. Now, I can't guarantee I'm going to answer it comprehensively, because some questions are harder than others, and I have a few here that I'll answer at the end. But I want to talk about the old model, because this is really what led me to work with families. Most of my caseload now is behavior intervention, executive function coaching, dealing with children and families that have tried lots of things and they're still not getting the results that they want. And so when people come to me, they're usually really tired, especially mom. They're really, really exhausted. They are feeling a little hopeless. They may have tried ABA. They may have tried play therapy. They may have tried meds even. They may have tried so many things. And so the old model of looking at behavior is they just don't want to behave, period, the end. They don't want to do it. And that's not true. I'm going to tell you that the research supports a couple of things. One, that children, even teenagers, really do want to behave well and make the adults in their life happy, make them proud of them. Nobody likes getting in trouble. And so the research continuously supports that children developmentally really do want to do well behaviorally and academically. And in this case, behaviorally, they don't want to be in trouble, right? And so we realize that children do want to behave. They do want to have successful skill sets to be in community with their friends, with their family, in school, however you define school. Again, I'm also a homeschooling coach, so I actually ended up homeschooling all three of my children. The second thing is we label behavior as disrespectful, as rude, as stubborn. And so there's a difference between identifying behavior and labeling behavior or the motivation of the behavior. And so part of what happens is if we come as an adult, teacher, parent, from the perspective that the child's being rude, disrespectful, and stubborn, that it's simply a matter of will, right? They simply will not do it. At that point, we as parents, we as adults, we as professionals, you can't coach anymore. You are now moved into punishment versus discipline, right? And in the core of discipline is discipling, equipping a child, a teenager, a young adult, because I do work with young adults as well, first, second year of college typically, who aren't just doing the things that we know they should do or they're capable of doing, but they won't do it, right? Because sometimes children don't have the skill set, but sometimes children just really do have the skill set. Example, my son, Marcus, who's 10, he reads above level and has read above level for many years, but he hates reading, right? So why do they hate reading, right? Why does he hate reading if he knows how to read? Okay, we may get back to that today. So when you look at, don't label your children. They 99% of the time, they are not being disrespectful. They're not being rude. They're trying to deal with their neurological system. They're trying to integrate. They're trying to manage what is happening to their body. And also, they may also not have the skill set that you're looking for. And so I always think about behavior in three ways. Is it a skill set? Is it a value? And is it a priority, right? Because there are different reasons that children, quote unquote, misbehave. Okay. And I say quote unquote because all behavior tells us something. ABA, play therapy, medications. I used to do play therapy in my office. Again, the way professionals are trained is we're trained in silos. So the ABA people know how to do ABA, they know how to do it well, but that's all they do. The play therapy people are bounded by state licensing and how to do traditional therapy. And they're bounded by certain rules and regulations and HIPAA requirements. And so they're trained this way, right? Medical therapy, and then meds. While again, there are times for meds possibly, all meds have a side effect. And number two, all meds eventually will wear off. And the younger the child, we know that they process medication different than adults do. So again, meds also have side effects, right? No matter which med you use, no matter how little bit you use. When Zachary came to us, he had 2 medications he was on, and we took him off those meds. So we were able successfully to move him off of medication, even though he is very, very, very severely ADHD and struggles with going to bed and falling asleep. So I think that, again, there's a time and place for ABA, for play therapy, for meds. I don't believe in that those always resolve the issues of executive function dysregulation, of the challenging child, of the angry child, of the spirited child, of the child who you've tried everything and you've tried these therapists. And why? Because it's not holistic. And I don't mean just holistic. And we'll talk about that in terms of do you use kale or essential oils, but it's not holistic in dealing with every section, every factor that contributes to our neurological system and dysregulation. Okay. Traditional discipline strategies should work for all brains, and that's just not true. A lot of traditional discipline strategies are wonderful. A lot of books that are out there are wonderful. I've read them all, most of them. A lot of things are really good, but here's the question. If you've tried a discipline strategy and it does not work, at that point, that should give you some good data that says they're not processing it. they may not be processing it for different reasons. Visually, language, neurologically, there's a couple of different reasons why that strategy is working. So I always say, if you keep doing the same strategy and it's not working, then you're going to make yourself crazy and you're going to make the child crazy, because it's not downloading for them. And what I do with families is figure out how are you going to say something? What strategy are you going to use so it downloads in their neurological brain? Because ultimately, behavior is a brain function. And we have to really understand what the inputs out so that what the inputs are in that you need so you can get the right outputs. Talking about it over and over should work. They just don't listen. Again, if you've talked about it till you're blue in the face and you've asked your child to pick up their shoes 52 times and they still don't pick up their shoes, there is a reason for that. And it's not always because they are being stubborn or disrespectful, or they just don't want to pick up their shoes. Now, sometimes it is they don't want to pick up their shoes, but I bet you there's a reason why they don't want to pick up their shoes. And sometimes it isn't. And so this idea of let's just keep beating a dead horse and keep beating a dead horse, if that's not working, then you don't have the right strategy. And again, you haven't figured out what I call the secret sauce of the child's brain. Okay, they're just being overly dramatic. They just are choosing to not do things. They just, this is just a matter of will. That's it. It's their will. They will not obey the first time. And don't get me wrong, I'm very old school. I believe that children need to learn respect and authority. And I'm totally down with all of that. I think that's really important. However, I think that we, with ADHD, ASD, PDA, even ODD, which is my least favorite diagnosis, I could talk about that for an hour, about the over-labeling and misrepresentation of ODD, particularly with boys, that if we don't understand the brain and we don't understand visual processing, language processing, if we don't understand what systems their brain responds to, then it's not going to work. And you could beat it over the head and you could try to even, threaten the child and they're still like, whatever, right? And I think that that's the old model. Now, these are not every reasons, but these are the ones I keep hearing over and over and over and over. By the way, I don't have on here is OT therapy. OT therapy has its place in behavior, but OT therapists are not trained in executive function coaching. They're not trained to deal with family systems. They're not trained to deal with gut health necessarily, right? So they're not trained in those things. So OT will work on some good academic skills. Certain OTs that have certain experience with ADHD clients may have some training, but the reality is that OT will only cover one puzzle. Remember, there are puzzles, okay? So I think it's important that we understand that there are lots of puzzles. By the way, I know somebody just put but I am not saying that you can't use meds, nor should you use meds. I am saying that meds are one choice of the puzzle, and every family has to make that choice, right? No shame or condemnation on meds. I gave you the story for my family, for us. We chose not to go that route, and the families I work with, kids are on meds, some are on meds and want off, some are trying to prevent meds. So it's every family has, and I really believe in supporting that choice. But I do also want to share that sometimes meds alone are not enough. And if meds alone are enough and you're happy, awesome. Awesome, that's wonderful. But if they're on meds and you're not getting the results that you want, then you're missing a piece of the puzzle. Okay, and so
I just want to chime in there because
go ahead.
I'm not for or against, and definitely dealt with this in my own household. But I will say that some people are highly allergic to meds that though they're supposed to be helping, and instead it amped up their anger 100 times. Instead, so one thing that I learned, and I felt like I feel like I keep my ear to the ground, and I know things and I hear things, But one thing I learned along the way, and I think my kid was an early teenager, was the GenSight testing, which is an oral swab, and it tests all of the mental health meds, ADHD meds, anxiety meds, depression meds, all of the mood stabilizers, all the antipsychotics. It's like one saliva test, and if you paid for it out of pocket, it's like $350. Most insurance companies cover it. You would only need to do it one time, and it basically red lights, yellow lights, green lights these meds, and it puts it in a category, and it tells how the individual metabolizes these medicines. So I like to tell people about that because I feel like a lot of people don't know about it. I feel like it should be the law in the US that they have to do that one time before they prescribe meds. But if you haven't had that done, you might want to do it. And if you're having some severe behaviors, I mean, in my household, we found out that the very medicine that was supposed to be helping was not helping at all. And there were allergies to it. And so that was a game changer for us. So again, I just want to say I'm not for or against, but I am totally for that testing to identify what meds might be best for said individual if you're going down that med highway. And you should be able to get that test with your psychologist or psychiatrist, definitely the psychiatrist. And you should be able to ask them about it and they'll know all about it. Your pediatrician could probably order it as well, but it's not as easy for them and they may give you pushback on it.
And I love that you said that. That is one of the tests when I work with families. We'll recommend if a family wants to use med. And the way I look at this is medication. It's kind of like being a type 2 diabetic. A type 2 diabetic, if their sugar is out of control and there's a lot of stuff going on, then sometimes medication temporarily is really useful to stabilize a little bit until we can learn lifestyle changes, until we can change our food, until we can get a workout, until we maybe get additional information about our blood testing. So I look at medication and behavior in the same way. Again, I love that you brought that up, Allison, because I also make that recommendation. There's also some other testing that I recommend in dealing with a holistic approach to figuring out how a child is metabolizing food as well, which is a piece of this, and also nutritional deficiencies, which is a piece of this as well. And again, this is what makes ADHD executive function, and sometimes as parents make us crazy, is that every child is different. There are 7 kinds of ADHD. There are 42 at least cofactors with ADHD, and ASD and PDA and ODD and all the things. And someone talked about Down syndrome, which, by the way, I just finished working with a Down syndrome family. So I'll address that question in a moment. That it isn't a one shot. Right? It isn't like you have a vitamin B deficiency, so you take more vitamin B. Executive function dysregulation has many inputs, and we've got to be very prescriptive. And so what I do as a learning and behavior therapist is that I'm going to help you figure out what is the root issue of this behavior dysregulation, right? The old model is behavior modification is enough. In other words, we discipline, that's it. Love and logic. By the way, I'm a huge fan of love and logic. I just love me some love and logic. Do I use love and logic with my own children? Yes. However, love and logic is not complete. Positive Discipline by Jay Nelson. It's not complete. And I know as a college teacher, I taught behavior. And then when I had my own children, and then when I had now this, I realized that those models, which are all research-based, which are beautiful models, maybe for a typical child, but if those strategies are not working, then there's more going on. And so the behavior modification of just saying, sticker charts or logical consequences, which again are a piece, if that's because there are several reasons why that's not processing. So that's the old model, okay? The new model is holistic assessment of the neurological system has to happen. What does that mean? Holistic assessment of the neurological system. That means we have to look at all of the pieces. One of them is physical health, right? And there are many things physically in the brain, nutrition, gut health, just the physical body, okay? we must figure out that piece of the puzzle. And so I go through my families and I have a series of checklists of that. We're going to be very didactic and we are going to go through, and I also refer out if I need to, if there's something I don't do. And so I'm going to be able to give you that. So that's one thing. Okay. We need to look at the physical body itself. Just because red dye is bad and has negative effects for one child does not mean that another child who's also experiencing behavior issues, that red dye is the trigger point, right? So we have to figure that out. And there's so much on the market that it can become so overwhelming. So I have a very, 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 very simple and easy way to figure that out, okay? I also tend to be holistic in terms of, again, if someone does not want to use medication, then there are a lot of things on the market that can help as well. And we'll just camp right here for a second. So one is the physical health. The second thing is, how does a child process language? Okay, so language processing is not known as much in the US as it is in other places. When you talk to a child, right, a teenager, an adult, even anybody, how are they processing that language? And what we know about kids with ASD, PDA, ADHD, Down syndrome, there is different, what I call language codes, in which you're saying something and they're looking right at you and they're like, I don't know what you're saying, right? You could have told me 15 times to go clean my room. And oh, really? You said that? Or right. And you're puzzled and you're like, but I said it 15 times. I wrote it down. I created a visual chart and it's still not getting through. Right? And so I go through and what do you say? What don't you say? And depending on the profile of your child's dysregulation, I do a dysregulation profile that we figure out what is happening so we can actually use the correct language that's going to calm the neurological system, not make it worse. Remember that at the core of dysregulation, if you don't remember anything else, there's two things you need to remember. One is at the core of dysregulation is that if we are dysregulated neurologically, okay, it's a response to the environment. It's a response to the stimulus. Okay, that's because our nervous system is not doing its job well. And also I get to a point that I'm so dysregulated that now I'm what we all see as outburst or disrespect or throwing things across the room. And so we have to know how to calm the neurological system and also figure out the root issues physically, right, brain-wise, as well as environmentally, that causes the neurological system to become dysregulated, right? Think of your own dysregulation. You become dysregulated too as adults. The problem is we can buy coffee and drink wine, children can't, right? We do a lot of things that are not very good to regulate ourselves. And so we also become dysregulated. If you yell at your children, you've become dysregulated. No shame, no guilt, no condemnation. But the reality is, I'm a former angry person, by the way. I really understand anger a lot because I grew up in an angry home. I was an angry parent for my first one. And so I understand that when we're dysregulated, right? And so how we are perceiving what's happening and how we respond is key, which is why, unless your child's a teenager, I only work with the parent. Why? Because the parent is the most powerful person in the room. The adult is, okay? And your kids trust you. I used to do play therapy in my office, and I realized that in my office, nobody dysregulated. Kids didn't just feel it. And lots of parents come to me, their children have been to therapy, they're in counseling, they've been to psychiatrists, and it's not working. Well, one of the reasons is we're not dealing with the neurological system. And part of that is that we're not equipping the parent to know what to do when the child dysregulates. Okay. And if traditional discipline methods are not working, then they're not working because you don't have the proper inputs. And so that's really important. We got to rewire the brain. The brain is a muscle. It has the ability to change. And I've dealt with clients that have brain injuries, strokes, as well as born with severe brain injuries. I had a child just finished up a couple of months ago that was born with only parts of their brain, and their anger outburst was getting ridiculous. We're punching mom, throwing things, and really, really, really bad. And we did the program, and guess what? not only did he get better, but I also, a mom decided that she wanted to teach other people how to do this. And so it was really cool and very exciting, because I said to them, we're going to have some change. How much? I don't know. And we actually had some dramatic change. And so I think that we have to remember, if you're feeling frustrated and overwhelmed and hopeless, it's because you haven't found the right inputs. And so we're going to go next to one of my, I think, parent reviews. Yes. So I have several parent reviews on my Facebook profile. This is one of my parents who I love, and she's given me permission to use this publicly. She is a behavior interventionist. And so she had a lot of skill sets. And she came to me because her child was adopted, or two children that she adopted, and she was a behavior therapist with a bachelor's degree in early child education, a master's degree in developmental psychology, and she couldn't figure out what I call the secret sauce. Right? The secret sauce of that neurological system. And even with all her training, she came and she started working with me. She was so diligent. Her child has ADHD, SPD, drug exposure, et cetera, a lot of other things. And she began to have results. And I was able to support her and equip her. I'd never met with the child, by the way. I only met with her, and met with her. And all of a sudden, her daughter began to have shifting, right, into positive behavior, into better behavior, into a stronger bond with her mom, into having a little bit more peace, right? And also how to advocate. One of the things I do, part of my program, is teach you how to advocate if they are in a school system. What can we do to make it better for them? And overall, the behavior changed, the attitude changed, the mood changed. Okay. Does the child still have all these things? Yes. ADHD, ASD, neurological issues, right? They're still there. But we had such success. But what she did is she equipped herself, and she would come to my program, and she would then implement. And it was a relationship that her and I have into getting the best results, and she did get the results. Okay. And this is one of many parents I've worked with who come, and even those who have tremendous amount of expertise. Why? I've been doing this a really long time. And I also, again, I have 3 children of my own, completely different in how they deal with behavior and dysregulation. All right. So,
Elizabeth, I just wanted to say too that sometimes an outside, and I know a lot of parents have done this because they've gone to therapy or the therapy didn't work, but sometimes an outside set of eyes, and that set of eyes are not tired of your
yes.
situation. It's good for somebody else to kind of look at it and maybe see what you're not seeing. It's kind of one of those things like when you're proofreading something, you've read it 100 times and you're just reading over the mistake because you know how it's supposed to say, what it's supposed to
Yes.
say. And
Yes.
sometimes when you're in it, and you're looking at it all day, every minute of your life, you go to bed thinking about it, you wake up thinking about it.
Yes.
It's hard to see the whole big picture. So I do think that there's a lot of insight to a second set of eyes on the whole situation, because maybe there's something right there that you just overlooked. It's not that you're crazy. It's just
Mhm.
somebody else can see it plain as day and you can't because you're in it.
I agree. I agree, which is why, when my daughter gets married, I'm not doing engagement coaching for her because she's my daughter, right? My husband and I do marriage coaching. And so we have to step outside. And I am so fortunate that I have when I get stuck, and sometimes I do, I'm so close to it that I have lots of people I can call to say, hey, help me walk through this, because there is no shame in having a coach and having someone that can help you kind of look at things. And I say this, right now I'm working just a parent who came to me very defeated. They have a child who was throwing things, tantrum, 11 years old, ADHD, ASD, just all the things. And even the dad was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. And he was a little hesitant, but he did it. And long story short, we've just had our 3rd session, and we have seen major change, not only in the child, but in the parenting dynamic of the parent. I mean, it just 3 sessions, which is why I say we can do this in 6. Okay. So it doesn't have to take 5 years to get results. And I'm all about quick results. Let me read some of these questions and then we'll talk about my program. How do you discipline a child with Down syndrome? By the way, if your question is not on here, please put it in the chat right now so I have time to get to it. I have 3 questions that I have here is, one is, how do you discipline a child with Down syndrome? How to teach my child to control his behavior, such as throwing things, and how to support in school. So if that wasn't one of your questions, please put your question in the chat right now, and then I'll get to it. So the first one, how do you discipline a child with Down syndrome? Okay, that is a great question. And I do work with children with Down syndrome with lots of success by equipping the parents, equipping the adults that deal with the caregiving. And the answer is yes, a child with Down syndrome can also learn to regulate, even if they have limited cognition, development, limited language. In this case, the child I'm working with has very, very minimal language, very minimal. And cognitively, even though they're older, they developmentally are very delayed in terms of how they perceive the world. And so the answer is yes. Now, how do I answer that in 1 second? I can't. Asking me what do we do? I would have to know the first thing that I do, and this is the first thing in my program, is discover the root issue of the behavior. Why is the behavior manifesting the way it manifests, right? We need to understand that. And I go through a series of assessment with the parents, gathering data, and working with the parents to figure this out first. We have to figure out the root issue of the behavior. If you don't figure out the root issue of the behavior, you're going to be spinning your wheels. It doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like building a house. You've got to deal with the foundation, not just, does it look pretty and is it got a good paint color? So the good news is children with Down syndrome can improve regulation. The tools that I use with Down children are a little different. And so it will depend on the cognitive ability, the language ability, and the physical ability of the child with Down syndrome. Like all children, we have to look at where they are developmentally, where they are physically, and where they are emotionally, and also language ability. So those are all going to play major factors. How do I teach my child to control the behaviors such as throwing things? Well, yes. As someone who dealt with kids in school that threw chairs at me, and also my 10-year-old many years ago, when he was going through it, threw chairs at me too. So how do we do that? Well, again, we have to figure out, this is what we will do in 6 sessions, discover the root issue of the behavior. Equip yourself with the language that makes sense for your child's brain. If you're using language that the child can't process, that means that that's not the right language. And so we've got to do that and to figure out, there's a lot of reason why children throw things. Sometimes they throw things because they're mad. Sometimes they throw things because they don't know how to express what they want to express. Again, I have no contextual information about the age of your child, the development of your child, the neurological system of your child, the environment. Are you parenting by yourself or with a partner, a boyfriend, a husband? Like, I don't know, right? The context. And do you see just right there all of the factors? It's not just one strategy, which is why sometimes you read a book, you try the strategy and it doesn't work, right? Or you go do ABA therapy and it works for a little bit and then it doesn't work. Well, because again, what I do is I bring all of the context, all of the contextual markers that we have to deal with in order to get the results that we're looking for. Okay, it's very comprehensive, but it's also, again, 6 sessions, right? We have to learn the 5 factors that must be addressed in order to see behavior change, okay? I've narrowed it down to 5 significant factors that we can do strategy with to have results, sometimes as easy in a couple of weeks, okay? So we have to learn those factors, and how they play out in each child and each family is a little different because no 2 children are alike and no 2 families are alike. One of the things is that I work with the adults to deal with how they perceive what is happening in the behavior, because you're the most important thing in the environment. And that is so significant, okay? And then how do I support my child in school? Again, I only have, maybe they're not functioning. Again, is it academic? Is it behaviorally? Is it both? There is something that's happening in that school environment that is not working for that child. The question that I help families answer is, should we keep that child in that school environment? Do we need to switch the school environment? Do we need a different type of school, a homeschooling, private school, charter school? There's all kinds of questions. It would depend, it looks like whoever wrote the question here, it would depend, is it academic? is it ADHD? This morning, I just talked to a parent who the child's in private school, but they have very severe ADHD. But they've had only one test, and I think there's some academic issues going on. So which came first? Is it the ADHD impacting the academic, or is the academic impacting the ADHD, or both? Right. And so I help you figure that out and drill down what is happening that your child is not regulating well in school. The other thing I do well is I will help you talk to the school, what to say, what not to say, what is legally required, and when do we call it quits with the school? When do we know that just a school environment is not going to help things? Because public school, private schools, charter schools, they are meant for the masses. They are not meant for the individual. And sometimes, not always, I have helped many individuals succeed in their public and private schools. But I've also worked with families in which that school environment is not going to do it, no matter how many IEPs or 504s we throw at it. Right. And there are so many reasons for that we can't get into right now. And I appreciate schools. My husband's a teacher, but I also know severely the limitations of traditional schooling. There's many limitations. And sometimes it's not appropriate. Sometimes it's not going to work. Yeah. Go ahead,
I
ma'am.
just want to come on that because I think it also starts getting a little bit harder when they get into their teenage years. Kids are mean, in the schools. They don't mean to be, they can't help it, I guess, but they pay attention to the one that's always turning in their assignment late, or that takes forever to do something. If they have processing speed or working memory issues, if they're in that traditional classroom, or if they're always getting bad grades, or they're always getting in trouble for being, out of their seat or whatever happens. And then it kind of, the ante is upped whenever they start in junior high and high school. And then that whole teenage, I call it's like the typical teenage behavior, and I call it on steroids, right? When we have kids that have disabilities or ADHD or autism or whatever, it's like this perfect storm of hormones and disabilities and teenage years. Yeah, it's just bad. And but there's so many challenges there, but then they get to this point where I always do everything wrong. I do everything wrong at home. I do everything wrong at school. The teachers think so, that the kids think that so, everybody thinks so. So why should I even try? I might as well just show them exactly what they expect of me. And I think that the earlier, and I know everybody on here is trying, and I was in the same boat for many years. But the earlier that you can get the right fit and the right intervention, the better for those upper years that are challenging for sure.
Yes, I think you said it well, and not in a negative way, but the perfect storm. A good chunk, I would say 2/3 of the kids I'm working with are in between that 6th grade to 10th grade. And then the other big chunk is that first year of college, that they don't know how to handle the executive function demands of college. And so, yes, I think that the earlier you equip yourself, the easier transitioning kids from elementary to junior high to high school, and high school to either vocational training or college or whatever they're going to do next, is better. Okay. I just think, let me tell you, I'm a professional. I believe in professionals. I believe that you need help in the journey of parenting at all times. There's always something we can learn. But I also believe that one of the things we've done to parents in our society that really annoys me, and it's a chip on my shoulder a little bit, is that we think that therapists know everything, and we think that we as parents cannot equip ourselves. And so the reason I changed my model from working only with the child to I mostly work with the adult is because the adult is the one that's consistent for their lifetime. The adult is the one that's their biggest cheerleader. No one's going to love your child
It's
more than
always going to be there. Like eventually you go
yes,
away. It's like,
yes,
yes. I just
exactly.
wanted to mention one more thing, because for those of people that are on here and maybe you're shaking your head, you've got an 18-year-old, you've got a 22-year-old,
Yes,
you've got a child that's older. These kids and their brains develop slower than everybody else. They mature
yes,
slower. So when
yes.
you're looking at your 18-year-old and thinking of what they should be doing, they may be 4 to 5 years behind their peers, maybe more. But
Mhm.
then I just want to encourage that they get there. Like, I
Yes.
always use the term of we might be late to the party, but we get there,
Mhm.
and it takes time. So just don't lose sight of that. I think that's a hard thing for a parent because you look at the child, like, you look at your third grader who might be ADHD or on the spectrum and they can't do homework or can't do work at all independently. And all these other kids their age, their peers are doing things independently, and we're always comparing, but that's not always fair, and they don't measure that, they never measure up to their age, their maturity, what their physical age is and where they're at brain wise. It's two different
Right.
things. So
Right. And I think that you said something, and can you leave the last slide on so I can talk about the last three wins real quick? I think that what you mentioned is that traditional schooling, the challenge can be that we're comparing. I like what you said, right? And comparison is the thief of joy, right? So when we compare our children, well, other 8-year-olds do this, or other 12 or 18-year-olds or 15-year-olds, at that moment, y'all need to stop doing that because your child isn't there. And that doesn't mean they're not going to get there. My 22-year-old, I remember in high school, she cried and cried and cried several times. Like, what am I going to do? I have 5 learning disabilities. I don't spell well. I don't want to go to college. I remember, right, the crisis of her. And that's why I love working with college students and senior year, junior year. I've worked with quite a few where kids come in completely hopeless, mom comes in completely hopeless, and then we come up with a plan because guess what? There's more than one way to the party, right? There's more than one way to get either graduated or get a career. Or again, I just love working with launching children who are different and maybe they haven't measured up. And so if your kids are older, please, 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 please do not lose hope. And my child now runs a successful, profitable business and runs ministry, right? I don't know how. Girlfriend can't remember what time her flight leaves sometimes, but she is like doing it and living a life. But it took, again, figuring out the root issues and the factors and language and really equipping her. But first, I had to get equipped so I could equip her to be successful. So please don't lose hope. Your question was, how do you transfer knowledge and strategies to others that work with your children? Ooh, man, that is one of the toughest things to do. However, I would suggest that you put everything in writing and call meetings and talk to people one-on-one. It is really, I worked at Fort Worth ISD for 2 years, and this was the toughest part of my job, as to get all the players to understand what was happening with the child. And sometimes some schools are very open to it and sometimes schools are not. I will tell you this, that as soon as they hit 9th grade, 9 through 12 schools tend to, I'm not going to say every single one, but 99% of those public high schools, and even sometimes private schools, do not want to do it. And they will be like, they have to get prepared for the real world. Okay. One example I have is I work with a child in private school. She was in 9th grade. She was excellent in all academic areas except for language arts, and she had selective mutism. And I actually worked with it for a year to improve her writing. We found out she had dysgraphia, and I wrote letters, we had meetings, and the school would refuse to give her accommodations in just her language arts class, just her language arts. So again, it was sad, but this child was very, very bright and had selective mutism. And they thought that the ELA teacher said, well, she's just choosing not to talk. And it's like, okay, you don't understand selective mutism. So sometimes we advocate, we do our due diligence, and then sometimes that's not the school system for our child. So only each family. And if you want to work that out, by the way, I've always worked full-time and homeschooled. I've always had to get a paycheck. And guess what? When there's a will, there's a way. And there is, and even if you can't afford private school, again, there are many options that are there. And I've helped many parents come up with the right school system that works for them and their family. So don't lose hope. The
I
last
just
thing,
want to mention something too, because I'm sure that there's some parents on here, and look, they are crystal clear that, and this isn't not losing, it's not losing hope, but that they're crystal clear that due to the disabilities that their loved one has, that maybe that child will never work. They're not going to run a business.
Mhm.
For those families, and that's okay because there's plenty of people in that category. But some of the services that you provide, maybe making it more comfortable at home in the living environment, maybe that your loved one is more comfortable, there's less outbursts, there's things, and kind of getting to the root of the problem. So improving the quality of life of whatever that life looks like, because I know everybody's is a little bit different. So the bottom line is you've worked with families that maybe have had somebody that's nonverbal or other all kinds of situations. Maybe not the end goal is that they're going to work or going to college, but all
Yes.
across the board.
Yeah, the child that I just finished working with who Down syndrome, they're not going to go get a job. They're not a mental capacity, cognitive ability. The gentleman who has the brain injury, he's not going to go to work. And so, thank you. Those are two children I've worked with. But we did at home, tantrums got less, no throwing things, and communication improvement. So again, one of the things, some of the outcomes in 6 sessions is power struggles decreased by 100%. Right? We can actually stop the power struggles, decrease meltdowns by 85%, and increase cooperation by 92%. So these are things I've measured in the years that I've been working with families, in which we can actually measure the results. And I'm very measured when I work with my families. When you work with me, we can get this done typically in 6 sessions. I have a group coaching program. In 6 sessions, we knock it out. We meet once every 2 weeks via Zoom. And then I also will do family coaching. Sometimes that is really useful for high school and college age students to be part of the process. And so we'll do that in 10 sessions, and then we're done. And so I just want you to know, I've narrowed it down to the quickest possible way we can walk through equipping you all. And so if you decide that, you know what, I'm tired of spinning the wheel and doing the hamster wheel, and again, if you're using a strategy and you're not getting the results and you've tried all the things, then I would love to work with you. I do homeschool coaching, marriage coaching, homeschool strategies, ADHD behavior parent strategy program, and also ASD and all of the learning disabilities and special needs. And the best way to reach me is to text me for the quickest response. My cell is right there. And one of the things I want people to know is that if you are very serious, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if you want to make this work and you want to do this, I will financially work with every family who comes to me. We will figure it out how to make this happen, because I am a private practitioner, and so I don't take insurance, but every family who's come to me who says, I really want to do this, we figure it out. So I will go up and beyond to make sure that you get the help that you need.
Do you have a free consultation? So if somebody wants to learn more, do you have a free quick
Yes.
consultation? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
The
So
next step is to text me, and then we'll set up the consultation.
everybody is going to get a copy of today's slides, and also a link to the recording. So they will be able to have all of your contact information on there. The slides went a little crazy. I always just, like to mention that we work on a collaborative team here at CPG. I know some people, if you've attended before, you've seen me, you've seen Michelle. We typically moderate the webinars. So we're glad that you're here with us. All of our past webinars live on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, so you can check those out there. We're always happy to share a PDF of the slides. So if you listen to one and you'd like an email with the PDF of the slides, everybody registered for today is going to get a copy of the slides and a link to the recording. We always offer free personalized consultations. We're here to help you on your planning journey, whether you've done a lot of planning and you just want a second opinion or a look under the hood, or whether you've had good intentions and it's kind of been on the shelf and you want to pick back up where you left off. Wherever you are in that journey, we can work with you on that. We're not here to rain on any great relationships that you already have in place, but certainly here to help make sure that you have money in the right buckets, that we have things set up properly to preserve eligibility for state and federally funded programs, and also bring your attention to any other programs that you might want to be aware of for your loved one that might be helpful to them on their journey. So thanks everyone for being here with us today. Thank you again, Elizabeth, for reconnecting with us, and happy connecting, and we'll look forward to our next webinar. Thanks so much everyone, and we'll catch up with you soon. Bye now.